we are having a fireside chat next to the fire. And can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Avery's grandma, Meredith. I'm 68 years old, and I was born in 1948 in Roanoke, Virginia.
And I am her grandpa. My name is Earl Sproul, and I was born in 1948 in Norfolk, Virginia. And we live in Roanoke, Virginia currently.
Can you please tell me a bit about the Great Depression and when it happened?
The Great Depression started in 1929. It was actually started at the time of the Wall Street crash, but it was the result of poor economic conditions leading up to the Wall Street crash. And it consisted of massive unemployment, a lot of business failure, and a lot of people who were hungry because they didn't have jobs. And so it was a time period that lasted until approximately 1939, which was the beginning of what we call World War II.
Do you know anything about the concentration camps and what they were like?
Well, the concentration camps were well known in Germany. The German Nazi leader Adolf Hitler imprisoned almost 7 million people. About 6 million of them were Jewish people. He imprisoned them in a fenced-in camp, and they were tortured, and unfortunately they were killed. It was a very bad time.
And what TV shows did you have back then, and what were they like?
Let's see. I bet Grandpa can answer some of these. I know we had our first television when I was 4 years old in 1952. The Ed Sullivan Show was very popular. Do you remember?
Yes, and I Love Lucy.
Yes.
And there was another program that I liked a lot. It was called Father Knows Best. And so all the TV programs were in black and white. There were no color TV programs. There were also news programs that came on. So.
Do you know the Today Show, which is still on television every morning, came on television in 1952? Probably one of the longest running television shows ever.
Was there any popular music when you were growing up?
Oh, this is one for Grandpa.
Lots of popular music. Yep. The people that we referred to as teenagers, we were teenagers, starting in 1961, we had a music that came about that was referred to as rock and roll. And the older people, our parents, didn't particularly care for rock and roll. They liked swing music from the World War II era in the 1950s. Music by the big bands and by people such as Benny Goodman.
Actually, I think that was the late 40s.
Yeah, the late 40s, you're right. But we had rock and roll music, and there were artists who started presenting songs, and there was a lot of fast dancing, and there was a significant difference of opinion between our parents and us during that time period about what was considered to be good music. And then you had a lot of groups from England, such as the Beatles, who came out with songs. And so there's still a lot of difference of opinion about what constitutes a good song.
What were the most popular songs?
Oh, well, I'll let you answer that. Grandpa likes music.
Well, there were lots of good songs. Elvis Presley had a lot of popular songs, such as I Can't Help Falling in Love and other fast songs. And you had artists such as I mentioned before, the Beatles. They had songs out like I Want to Hold Your Hand and P.S. I Love You. So they had a mixture of fast songs and slow songs. And there were a lot of dances. Most people would dance to the songs. And the dances were usually sponsored by the schools.
What hairstyles did they have?
Girls had ponytails, just like they do today, but boys had flat tops.
Yeah, we had flat tops and we had crew cuts. A crew cut is basically where they cut all your hair off, except little stubs coming out. And a flat top was, as it's indicated, that your hair was cut short, but it was flat on the top. Some boys, they'll let their hair grow out in the back, not real long. It was actually short. And then in the 60s, the Beatles came out with their hair growing down, and it looked like they had put a bowl on their head and just cut the hair off.
Can you tell me about transistor radio and what they look like?
Oh, I can tell you about that, because when I was a little girl, my parents gave me a transistor radio. It was a little black box about this wide, about this tall, and about this thick. And it was a radio that ran on batteries. You could carry it around with you just like a cell phone, but we didn't have cell phones then. So transistor radios were a big deal because you listened to all your favorite songs on the transistor radio.
And they were portable. In other words, the big deal was you could carry your transistor radio and it would receive the music over the radio waves, and you could carry it around with you, as opposed to having to sit in your home and listen to the radio on a large radio receiver
Plugged into the wall.
So a transistor radio was small and portable. It was very different than the big radios that people had typically at their homes.
When did you get your first one?
I would say it was about 1961.
So how old were you?
I was 13 years old.
Do you know anything about Pearl Harbor and when that happened?
Grandpa.
Pearl Harbor occurred on December 7th of 1941. And Pearl Harbor was the date where the Japanese Empire, led by their military principally, decided that they were going to attack the Navy base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. And there were almost 3,000 Americans killed during that attack. And that was the date that the United States decided they would enter the war. And when the United States entered the war because of the Japanese attack, then Adolf Hitler, who was the evil leader of Germany, then he declared war on the United States. So the United States went to war in 1941 to help to defeat Japan and Germany, and they were allied with many other nations, particularly Britain and France, against Germany and Japan.
What was the style back then?
Like clothing style, you mean?
Well, let's see, in the 1950s, all the girls wore something that we called a poodle skirt. It was this big round skirt, and it actually had an applique of a poodle, a big white poodle on it, with a collar around his neck and a long leash that kind of went around the skirt. And we wore saddle shoes. Saddle shoes were all white shoes, but they had this black piece of leather that went across the top of the shoe that looked kind of like a saddle. So boys and girls wore saddle shoes. And let's see, the boys' styles, I don't know, they weren't too different, were they?
We had collared shirts with typically button-down collars, and we dressed with pants that had cuffs, and went to school in a well-groomed manner, and our hair needed to be properly trimmed. We did not have, long hair when we were growing up, and people needed to present themselves in a clean and mannerly fashion to show respect for their teachers and for all of the other people that were a part of the school system. And it was very important to come to school prepared to study. And it was actually a wonderful time to obtain a good education if you applied yourself by listening to the teachers and doing the homework and doing the things that they told you that you should do. So it was really a wonderful time to grow up because we were able to learn a lot from our school system.
And I will say one thing, girls could not wear pants
Right,
at all. We always wore skirts,
right. And boys always wore long pants to school,
no shorts.
and you know, you were supposed to be respectful of the people that were the principals and administrators and the teachers at your school.
Is there anything else you want to say?
About school,
About
About
styles,
anything?
well, your grandma and I just attended last weekend, October 7th and October 8th of 2016, our 50th high school class reunion. We were in the class of 1966 in Virginia Beach, Virginia at Frank W. Cox High School, and we were in the same graduating class. And our class had about 563 people in it. And the reunion was well attended, and it was wonderful to see many of our classmates, but what was also particularly nice was that many of our teachers were alive and present. My math teacher, Mrs. Waller, was there, and we had many other teachers that were there that were very important to us. And at the time, we didn't realize how important they were, but we look back on that, and we were honored by the time they took with us and all the things that they taught us. So it was a wonderful time to grow up in the 60s, and between the 50s and the 60s were a wonderful time to grow up. A lot of very nice people who appreciated the opportunity that they had to learn and to achieve. So it was really a very nice time to grow up in that particular part of Virginia, in Virginia Beach.
and we had a great time when we were kids. We played, me, my brothers, and my sister, played outside. After school, we'd come home, we'd get a snack, we'd go outside and play until dark. I would come inside and help my mom with dinner, and then we would do homework after dinner. But, in my family, playing outside was a big deal, all the time.
Yeah, and if you didn't do your homework after dinner, then we were made to do our homework as soon as we got home from school. So as long as we honored our commitment to doing our homework before bedtime, then we were allowed to play outside and then have dinner and then do our homework. So everybody wanted to play outside, so we always wanted to do our homework so we could get to play outside after we got home from school.
Well, I think that's going to end our video today.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Hope
Thank
you
you.
enjoyed.
thank you for
I
asking us
enjoyed
these
a
questions.
lot.
We enjoy talking with you, and we certainly know that you enjoy your studies, and we are very happy to be your grandparents.
Absolutely.